Osiris.
Under the scale, under the scale, under the scales. Under the scale, under the scale, under the scales. Hey everybody, I'm very thrilled with the response for the first Trey guitar episode last week. I'm glad you're tuning in for episode 2. First, a little housekeeping that I've been neglecting. Great guests like Trey and other band members, for example, are more excited to come on when they think that people are out there listening. The best way to demonstrate that is through likes, subscriptions, follows, ratings, and reviews on social media. Apple and Facebook are by far the most important in that regard. On Apple iTunes Store or the podcast app, if you wouldn't mind subscribing to the Under the Scales podcast and also giving me a rating, 5 stars, of course, would be nice, and a 1-sentence review, that goes a long, long way to proving I'm a legitimate podcast. Of course, liking and following my Under the Scales Facebook page too. And finally, following at Under the Scales on Twitter and liking, reposting, and commenting on SoundCloud and Google Play all are very important to me. Thank you, and blaze on. Now, we jump right into the hotel room where I'm asking Dan Cantor a couple questions before we walk across the street to Trey.
If you Google you find that you also played with Santana.
Mm-hmm.
How did that happen, and to what extent?
Santana played with us with Bieber. We played at Times Square, and we did Let It Be, and Santana did the guitar solo, and it was so incredible. We did a rehearsal with him, which was amazing, and
Wow.
He was actually there real early, just playing out of his amp, and just to hear him by himself, and then I sat down at the piano and started playing, and he just started soloing, and our whole band kicked in, and
Oh my God.
it was such an amazing. Just to hear him
And this
live.
was prior to the event, or that was actually
That was a
the
rehearsal.
event? Oh, that was just a rehearsal.
Yeah, and it was really special. And he said some special things to Justin and me. He said,
nice.
he never plays a single note unless his whole mind, body, and soul are into it.
Whoa.
Heavy, heavy things.
Yes. Yeah. Heavy things.
Touche.
So
yeah, it was amazing.
That's really
Such
cool.
an honor.
That's really cool, Dan. So, to keep on the theme of guitars,
Yeah.
multi-instrumental stuff. You, I thought I even recognized it's a Dean guitar with kind of a target on it.
Oh, it's a Gibson Les Paul. It's the Zakk Wylde Les Paul from
Zakk
Ozzy
Wylde.
Osbourne's
Yeah,
band.
yeah.
That was Gibson Zakk Wylde Les
Okay,
Paul. That's
okay.
his signature model. He was one of my first guitar heroes, and I love him. I studied him.
That guitar's so
and,
cool.
And it was always it was something I actually want to ask Trey is, that guitar was always my one day it will be mine guitar, and my wife bought it for me when I bought her dream engagement ring, as she called it. She bought me my dream guitar.
That's
so
a beautiful guitar.
it
That's
means
really
a
nice.
lot, and it really jumps out on stage, and I really play it as a tribute to him, because I want everyone to know how much he means to me, and if I could afford a Languedoc, I'd play that on stage and show everyone how much Trey means to me.
It's probably not the money keeping you from a Languedoc. It's probably the time, right? Isn't the waiting list
Well, yeah, that too. I mean, he hasn't even updated his website in a while. I mean, only what I read on Fantasy Tour and stuff.
Right.
I know people are having
right?
a
So the
hard
famous
time.
Paul Languedoc, of course, who makes Trey's signature guitars. So keeping with that, now you also you do have a Gibson endorsement now.
I do.
And,
yeah.
And are you playing now live? Are you and Justin?
No, I'm not touring with him. No, I worked on this last tour.
Okay.
But I am not on the road with this. I'm still musical directing other projects. I
Right.
just did a stint with Shawn Mendes, who's a
Right.
great new artist. But
Right.
it's been really nice to just go in, do the rehearsals, and then say goodbye.
That is cool.
Especially with the family. I could see touring again, though. I miss the road.
Yeah. Well, congrats on your 2 kind of young kids.
Thank you.
Right.
Appreciate it.
The newest addition is very young.
Very
a
young.
girl
7
named
weeks.
Layla.
Layla, like
Yeah.
the song.
It's a great guitar name for a daughter. Back to your and my job.
Yes.
So Dan and I are in a hotel room across the street from Madison Square Garden, and we decided to do this pre-interview because I wanted to get to know you, Dan. I wanted the fans to get an opportunity to hear your credentials.
Right on.
But now, you and I should talk about what are we going to do. So
I know.
we got our job really.
Well, things really escalated quickly. Do you want to explain how that happened?
Yeah. So Dan and I first started talking about doing this because I knew I had to get Trey on my Under the Scales podcast. It's like, he's my friend. It's obvious that I should get him on a Phish podcast. And I thought one of the cool ways would be to do a deep dive into not only his guitars, but his amps and those incredible, pedals and effects he's got on the floor. Mm-hmm. So his signal chain, so to speak. So Dan and I realized we have a lot of potential material to cover. And we thought we would work our way up slowly and possibly talk to Paul Languedoc about the making of his guitars, and possibly talk to maybe someone, Brian Brown, for example, Trey's guitar tech, and then work our way up, possibly talk to the people who are involved in Trey's amps. But then, like Dan said, it escalated super fast.
Yeah, what happened? Trey, you just ran it by Trey.
And now we're talking to Trey, yeah.
So just come talk to me.
Well, skip all the middlemen, just come talk to me. So, of course, you don't say no to that.
Yeah.
And but that left Dan and I kind of realizing we're going to have to leave some stuff out this time around anyway.
Yeah.
So we're going to focus on guitars.
On guitars.
Yep.
Yeah, and hopefully do some other parts, because I'm fascinated by everything, his amps, and really everything has been changing lately, so there is a lot to discuss.
Yeah, the motivation behind that change.
Yes.
And why do you go from one guitar, which is kind of perfect, to me,
yeah,
sounded amazing for years and years and years, to another one? Is it because Paul felt like improving it, or did Trey ask? So we'll find that out.
Yeah.
Those are mysteries. Do you have other mysteries?
Oh, there are tons of mysteries. I mean, also, I've tried to do my due diligence on behalf of every fan on, School of Phish and on Fantasy Tour. They have lots of questions. So I also try to represent them and do a collection of all the questions that are out there.
That's really smart. Did you go and solicit questions, or did you sort of comb through?
No, I just scrolled through and read all the blogs. I do that anyway with my time.
There you go.
That's my life.
Well, yeah. But I admitted on a prior episode of this to being on Fantasy Tour more than
I think you start a lot of the rumors on Fantasy Tour. But there are a lot of mysteries, bigger mysteries, little mysteries. This green language doc everyone wants to know. Does it belong to Paige?
Right. Is that Paige's guitar?
And that sounds so trivial, but it's not. It's a big deal.
So we were talking about the green guitar and how it might be Paige's, and other mysteries surrounding this thing, and hopefully we uncover them. But we want to do it in a way that the fans enjoy as well. So we're not going to go super duper deep.
Yes, not overly technical. I have a couple of technical questions.
Well, I mean, it's a deep dive. So yes, we are going to go deep and probably talk about the actual differences between the guitars and let Trey sort of come up with the level of complexity in his own words.
Yeah.
But it is fascinating that there are so many, and some have really just been used for tab.
Yeah.
Like the Koa 2.
The Koa 2, yeah.
And the Koa is of course a type of wood, and 3 Koas have been made.
Yes.
To date.
Yeah, Koa in itself is just fascinating.
Yeah.
Because his other guitars, the first one, the first, second, and sixth guitar. All right, so Old Reliable is 1, the Spruce Top is 2, and then his new Maple. Or he said it's mahogany back, and he said in an interview that it was actually a Spruce Top, but I think it's a Maple. And I'm not sure. I wanted to ask him that, the new blonde one.
Right.
Anyway, those are a combination of woods. Often guitars are, a different wood for the sides, back, and top. But his Koa guitars are all Koa. So why does Koa work? Because often, a mahogany is a darker sound, so they put a maple top on it to brighten up the sound.
Wow.
Whereas with Koa, is Koa just the perfect wood that
it's the magic wood.
It doesn't need another wood to balance it out.
Right. Yeah. And then this last Koa,
with that crazy flame, the Ossidoc.
Ossidoc.
Yeah.
It even has wood ribbing around it, which is a big deal, I guess.
Yeah.
Hard to work that stuff.
Yeah, it's beautiful how he does that. It's hand.
That might be my favorite guitar.
Yeah, me too, I think. Yeah. It's so pretty.
It might be the nicest looking, certainly. I don't know if it's my favorite in terms of the music that's come out of it, but we'll let Trey tell us his side of
Yeah,
that
I
as well.
wonder if I could do a graph of all the shows I've been to and what guitar he played at
Well,
those shows. I mean,
it's
there should be
hilarious
something on that app,
that you said
the
that.
Helping Friendly app, where it tells you what he played.
Well, it's funny. My friend sent me a spreadsheet. My friend, shout out to Craig Hillwig, sent me a spreadsheet, and he called it "Complete Waste of Time." But really, so he also has had a lot of questions, along with a lot of my friends, about Trey's guitar choice. And so for the 2016 shows, Craig tried to correlate it to his guitar choice to people's enjoyment of the shows, utilizing a rating system that I guess is on the Phish net.
Oh, that's cool.
And so, like, what guitar Trey was using, is there a correlation to shows that people enjoyed the most? And I think that's why he called it a complete waste of time.
Because
there was no correlation.
Yeah.
But maybe he was talking about a complete waste of time just doing that at all.
Yeah.
He should be doing his job, and he was doing this.
Well, since GD50, he switched guitars a lot more. But pre-GD50, he was playing the same guitar for a whole tour.
Yes.
And I think for fall and New Year's runs last year, he stuck with the same guitar. But in the summer, he's changing almost every show.
Right.
And using it for the whole show, but changing. So I wonder what that's
Yeah, we can ask him
about.
that. And then 2 changes were required because he did something in the same year that I've never seen him do, I don't think, is break a string.
Yeah, that's interesting. I mean,
Yeah.
let alone I saw him tune last night, actually.
He tuned?
Yeah, and
I don't
I've
think
never
seen
him tune, but I saw him.
Yeah.
Tuning.
So that's really unusual. Guitarists
But-
will break a string.
Yeah, all the time.
And they'll tune between
And he
songs.
bends so ferociously. I'm shocked. Can't believe he rarely breaks strings. Yeah.
It's amazing. Really amazing. All right, well, that's a great foreshadow. And then now Dan and I have to pack up a little bit of equipment
Yeah.
and walk across to Madison Square Garden where Trey hopefully is waiting.
Hopefully.
Yeah, man. Well,
So
thanks,
excited.
Dan, for coming for
Oh
this
my gosh.
pre-interview.
Thanks for asking me, Tom.
Yeah, dude. So, all right, well, here we go. Hey, everyone, again, just to get you oriented, now Dan and I are in Trey's dressing room with Trey backstage at Madison Square Garden. Last week, if you recall, Trey had just segued the conversation back to guitars, and Dan is about to ask the first question. Shh, here it is.
Your loyalty to that guitar. You're such a super fan of, like you were talking about earlier, of, I know, Page and Fripp and Hendrix. But yet, you didn't go out and buy the Jimi Hendrix Strat or this Les Paul. You went to this guitar. So I'm just curious, your commitment to the Languedoc that I'm sure, Gibson would love to make the Trey Anastasio model. What is it about this guitar that's been so loyal to?
I'll give you a little backstory, and this might explain it to some degree. So I moved to Burlington, and I started meeting a lot of friends up there. John Fishman was one of the first people I met, and we started playing together very quickly. And then I met Mike. I met Tony Markellis. This is all when I was 18, right when I moved up there. Tony Markellis, bass player from Tab, and I met shortly, maybe even before I met Phish.
Wow.
So we go way back. One of the people I met was Paul Languedoc, who worked at Time Guitars. He was not our sound man yet or anything, but he just worked at Time Guitars. So I bought at the time I was playing an Ibanez, and I bought a Strat style Time guitar that was a solid body with 3 single coil pickups like a Strat. Paul did most of the work. It became evident very quickly, even though he didn't own the company. Like, I went to the company was in a barn. Right down, and it was that first year that I was
that Time guitar had 22 frets.
That was a 22 fret.
24.
No, this was a 22 fret. It was I think it was a Strat length, right? A couple less frets.
Yeah.
I'm guessing. And the summer after my first year, Phish and I, who had become really close friends, decided we would paint some houses and raise money and go to Europe, get a plane ticket and go to Europe and play street music together. Phish was just starting. So we did that, and I needed a guitar that I could carry around in a small backpack with no case. So I had met Paul through buying the Time guitar, and I went to this little barn. It was like a white old barn where they had a guitar shop. They would hand build guitars, and I asked Paul if he would build me a tiny little, almost like a mandolin but with 6 strings. It was a solid body with one single coil pickup, and it had like a little switch on it. He made it out of, I think it was Paduke, and he made me this guitar, and I threw it in my backpack. And Phish and I went and played street music for the whole summer after our freshman year. Amazing experience. Many songs that became Phish songs were written on that trip.
How did you amplify it?
I had a
Did you have a
pig nose.
Yeah.
I think it was a pig nose, but I almost want to say it was smaller than that. Like it was one of those little. Are the pig nose the little rectangular?
I think it was a pig
Okay,
nose.
it's a pig nose.
Yeah.
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 Not one of those mouse amps.
Right.
Because I had to put it in my backpack.
Right.
And Phish and I went to Greece and Germany and slept in a car and slept on the street and met all these crazy people. And it was an amazing summer, and I had Paul's guitar with me. I love that thing. I never put it down. When the summer was over, I had a white stripe on my shoulder, and the rest of my torso was
tan.
sunburned and tan because I just played it the whole summer. Love that thing. And wrote a lot of the music that became You Enjoy Myself, Harry Hood. That was the kind of stuff we were playing. Just standing on the corner, just riffing.
Wow.
Wow.
It was really cool.
So then did you come back and decide to kind of get a little bit more serious about your guitar?
I came back and I had kind of been getting interested in jazz. So when I got back, I went and took a jazz summer program at UMass, jazz summer workshop. And I studied with this guy, Ted Dunbar, great guitar teacher. And Billy Taylor was there, Yusef Lateef. It was a great program. So I was becoming interested in jazz, and at the same time, still loved Jimi Hendrix and all the people that I loved. So I went back to Paul. Mm-hmm. We had become friends too, so this is the part where my timeline's a little shaky. We may have moved in together. Pretty quickly we moved in and became roommates. So, depending on what year this was made, I think we were already roommates.
87?
It says it's written in here exactly the date that it was made.
Oh, cool.
If we got a flashlight on that thing.
Yeah.
Yeah. See, in all the guitars he wrote, this was made on. My God, it's all faded. Built by Paul Languedoc for Trey Anastasio, November 1987. Okay, so we were probably roommates by the time. So we came back and Phish started, and I was playing that Ibanez, I think, if you look at early.
Right.
And then in the fall of 1987, I had, the way I remember it again, is that I wanted a guitar that was could do everything, what every young guitar player wants.
Right.
So it would be a hollow body with F holes.
For the jazz side of it.
And it would have like a rock scale length or whatever.
Yeah.
And I went and
Fender
started
scale,
talking to Paul about this. And he, this design was what he came up with to fulfill all those needs, Mm-hmm. So this one being the Who's the Marmar, the original 1987 guitar, Paul started building this for me. And I didn't know how it was going to come out. And that's the part of the story that may have gotten lost in history, that I didn't go buy this guitar from Paul. He built it for me. This design. Right. There was I didn't pick one up and play it and say, I like that, let me get one. It was, we talked about the elements that the guitar should have. And then he added his genius to the whole thing. So I remember this because he gave it to me in November of 1987, and Phish was playing at this ski lodge or something in Waitsfield. It was like a ski bar. Mm-hmm. And I got this guitar, and he was finally done. It's hand carved. It has a Paduke back, which is a hard red, beautiful.
Gorgeous back.
And he was kind of making it, and my understanding, the way I remember, is he was kind of making it up as he went along, and he, very supremely talented guy. I think he was running sound for us by then too. Mm-hmm. And it's got a floating bridge, and he put 24 frets on there, so it's got the scale length of a Strat. So it's
Yeah.
got the bite of a Strat. And the inlay on the first one, the 1987 guitar, is my puppy at the time, Marley. And it says, "Who's the Marmar?" And Marley used to travel with us. Everywhere that Phish went, Marley went. So that was really cool to me. But the top is maple, curly maple. So I remember when he gave it to me, it sounded so weird that I didn't even know if I was going to be able to play it. Was my first impression. It was so
Over the top, different from a regular
Yeah.
guitar.
and
How
any guitar,
so?
it was just kind of like it was.
It's got the Fender kind of neck, and it had the Gibson like ES 335 kind of
And
pickups.
it's
And
braced.
F-hole.
And it's braced. Yeah.
It's braced, and what that means is it's if you open the thing up, it's hand carved and braced like a mandolin. Meaning there's no hollow body
So it's
guitars
hollow, fully
that
hollow.
you buy anywhere have a block of wood down the middle.
Yeah.
They're actually only hollow on the sides.
Yeah, they call them wings.
Okay.
Yeah, and it's like there's a block of this is like a violin or like a very very resonant.
Right.
Very.
see
You don't
this.
need to plug it in, and it sounds like an acoustic guitar. You know.
Yeah.
It was brand new. It hadn't been warmed up, and I remember
Yeah.
trying to play it this first gig, and it was just like, with all due respect, it was so boxy sounding
Yeah.
that it was just shocking. And I do remember kind of having a thought, I just spent all this money, and Paul spent all this time. How am I going to get used to this? It's just from.
And what changed?
Well, then I started shaping my playing. It just became my instrument.
Yeah.
And I started writing songs based on the tone of the guitar. Squirming Coil. So
Yeah,
when we went to
totally.
record Lawn Boy, I had this guitar.
Uh-huh.
And what we did was, it's really interesting if you listen to that record, I put a mic on it. So I had a mic on the amp,
the
but the
amp,
amp was in
all-
the other room. So if you listen to, I don't know, is Okie Pa on that? Yeah, I think Okie
On the
Pa's on
original
that,
Lawn
and
Boy?
Reba and Squirming Coil. A lot of those have a
Yeah.
mic right on the guitar, you know?
And then you did another track amplified.
Yeah, we had 2 tracks, so it was almost like playing
Yeah.
an acoustic guitar
Oh my God.
onto the record.
Oh, that's so
And-
cool.
Choices started getting made like that's the guitar, and it also had this wicked sustain, so a lot of that Squirming Coil thing in the middle, which I love.
Right.
That
Yeah.
bit
Yeah.
is the guitar sustained very well, so I started writing sustaining parts.
Is the sustain a function of the guitar or the amp being loud or your signal chain and your distortion boxes, all that
Or
stuff?
the compressor, the Ross
compressor.
compressor, which I don't see on your board. Is it?
It's actually not there right
It's not
now.
there, okay.
But it doesn't. It never goes far. It's only a few feet away.
Yeah.
But
Yeah, that sustain. I think like particularly Coil or the End of Sky, and
yeah.
definitely in Yem, that long held note.
Yeah.
Where is that coming from? That's what you're asking, Tom. Like, was that
Yeah.
coming from
Yeah.
the amp or that sustain? And how are you controlling the feed, like so that
You
it seems
control
like
the
you're
f-
an inch away from feed. You're
You control the feedback by moving.
yeah.
First of all, and I think that I've been learning more about this over time by changing certain elements. Today, I think that the tone of the guitar of each guitar is a basis of the wood and Paul's craftsmanship. I think that I did some experimentation with pickups. Paul
Yeah.
grimaced and he let me do it, even though he didn't think it was a good idea. Over the last few years, but he's a patient guy. He's a very, very smart guy, and he knows what he's doing, and he kind of quietly, he's much more quiet than me, and he said, I picked those pickups for a reason. And I said, yeah, but, and he kind
You're
of...
talking about when you put in stag mags?
I put in all these, now they're back, everything's back to the original pickups now.
Just humbuckers.
Yeah.
Can you split them still?
They split,
They
but
split.
they're
Yeah.
humbuckers,
Yeah.
and they're, simple, not hot, not a lot of windings humbuckers. They're humbuckers like a Les Paul,
Yeah.
but with a split. And a lot of people I've talked to, and I've kind of gone on this tone quest over the last 5 years, have said, Leo got it right the first time, Leo Fender. Like there's 7,000 winds on a pickup. And what happens is they've built all these fancy schmancy hot pickups
Yeah.
over the years. And the theory is that Paul's theory and others is that you get more of a fundamental note with a simple pickup. And all of those harmonics you're looking for would be a function of, a tube, a vacuum tube turned
Yeah.
up where the harmonics kind of develop. But that doing all this fancy stuff to the pickups just ends up with sort of a buzzsaw-y,
Yeah.
over-processed sound. Anyway,
We're going to have to, I got some texts from management that you're going to have to go on stage pretty soon.
you can keep going.
But, let me ask you, sort of like an overriding question for me is what's been the motivation to change guitars? Like suddenly you will have a new guitar, like a Koa.
Yeah.
Well,
And is that coming from you saying, hey, Paul, this isn't quite right? Or is it Paul saying, you know what, I could make that better?
okay. Let me keep going because I missed out on a whole lot of this story. So I got this guitar from Paul, the
Okay.
87.
Okay.
And then Phish went into we really were on a tear starting shortly after I got this guitar. This is the one I'm talking about is the Paduk and Maple, Who's the Marmar.
Right.
So this guitar went on the road. We started going on the road, I think, around 88, and it came with me, and this was the Phish guitar for me.
Blonde number one.
Yeah,
guitar.
yeah. I call it Who's the Marmar. But,
Okay, Who's the Marmar?
It's called Old Reliable on
and
Fantasy Tour.
off we went into, it was there in 91, 92, 93, 94. I had this guitar, and I built my sound, my amp, and everything was built around this, and off it went. In 91, he built another one that he wanted me to try a spruce and maple
Yeah.
guitar because
Oh,
that's the most resonant. That's a traditional wood to use to build a guitar. And by now, Paul was starting to build. I think that might have been the second one he built. He'd have to clarify that. But anyway, he built a spruce and maple, and it was way more resonant. I didn't love it, even though I understood why someone might, but I had gotten so used to this one that I didn't use it too much. It had like a Harley insignia on the 12th fret because my wife Sue and I had bought a Harley and we were riding around. You remember that?
Yes.
We were riding around on this Harley and Paul put this really cool Harley insignia at the 12th fret. Anyway, that guitar, sometime after I got it, the neck started to warp.
Oh.
And it warped in this weird twisting way. It twisted. So Paul asked for it back because he couldn't really fix it. And apparently what he did was he sawed off the neck and he put a new neck on and then he sprayed it and spray painted it and it came back as a Sunburst guitar.
Right.
And I played that a couple years ago. I had the Sunburst guitar,
I've seen
like
that,
with tab and stuff.
Yep.
So I have all of them.
Right.
And I still play that. That's like my home practice guitar, but it was a little too resonant for me.
Okay.
Spruce and Maple was
Yeah.
like having an acoustic guitar on stage. It was just like feeding back all over the place.
Wow.
I couldn't,
Yeah.
It's a delicate balance with the feedback thing.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
These still are hollow instruments on a loud stage.
Yeah, I mean, B.B. King's, he put rags of them, and now his actual custom guitar, they're closed.
Right.
It's crazy. He plays like a 335 without F-holes.
I think a lot of the reason
Weird.
that you don't see as many of these out there now is that I think people are I've had the experience where I've handed it to someone and they were kind of surprised by how it's a very unique guitar, and you have to kind of tame it, or you have to like they're alive, you know.
Yeah.
You have to sort of learn to, you know, when you stand on stage and turn one of these things on, they're like, whoa, they're kind of like a snarling beast.
Yeah.
And so what I'm doing all night long, if you look, is like I'm turning right, turning left, stepping forward, stepping back. Like on a given note, like if I'm playing and I go, and I hit this note, if it could go, and I just habitually, you know, move my hand an inch forward and the feedback stops.
Yeah.
Depending on how far you are from the amp. So that's the divided sky thing.
Yeah.
Like I know, even sitting right here, if I'm hitting this, that note, you have to have the guitar 30-degree angle from the amp or something, or to me it's like at 10 o'clock.
Yeah.
2 feet, I step 2 feet in front of the amp and I go to 10 o'clock and it just feeds back like crazy.
Wow.
And then you go back a half an inch and it just stops.
Whoa.
Like, and then the other note, this D is a completely different position. That one has to be like perpendicular to the amp.
Wow.
So when I get to that note, I step back. So you're sort of playing, it's so hollow that you're sort of playing with the air. I've even had the experience talking to Mike sometimes when he picks it up. It's like, whoa, that thing is really weird.
So that one and the spruce one and your newest one, which is the mahogany maple.
Yeah.
They're combos of wood. Why can Koa be the back
let me finish
and
the
front?
story and I'll get to that if you don't
Okay.
mind. And I'm
Of
thrilled
course
to
I
be
don't
talking
mind.
about this because the second element to the story is that I love Paul so much.
Mm-hmm.
He was my roommate and friend and somebody that I admire as an artist. You know, the times that we lived together, we lived in Winooski together, and then I lived in Westford in a house with me and Paul and my wife Sue when we were just getting married. And sometimes when I went on the road, Sue and Paul were together, you know, at home, and he's an incredible guy, and it's such a huge part of the Phish story. We used to tour with just the four of us and him, and like there was one other guy. This was before Toph was our lighting designer, and Paul built our monitor system by hand, and Paul built my guitars, and Paul fixed the truck, and just his calm demeanor informed the progression of our entire Phish crew. And there's still guys on the Phish crew who tell me that. They say, you know, when I joined this crew, Paul came up to me and said, you know, we're very serious here, and we want this to be the top crew on the road. And he's just a very talented, very serious, very smart, and very kind guy. Mm-hmm. And so the reason I'm telling you that is because when I play these guitars, my heart is full of love for the guy who built them. I mean that. I write him emails every 6 months or so. I write him like an email to try to express to him the degree to which I love his guitars and how much it means to me that he built them.
Wow.
That's why I mean, it's like I love my friends, and he's one of them. And when I play this, I feel like it's a piece of wood that he hand carved this. This back is all curved and it fits into my body. And he sat there for, I bet, hundreds of hours sanding this and sanding it and sanding it. And there was just, the shape was all, it's a sculpture that he built. And so when I'm playing this instrument, it feels like a living part of the fabric of my friends and people that I really love. It's more than like a sound or the neck is.
That's interesting. I think that's all of Phish. I think the music of Phish means that to every fan.
I
it's
feel
more
that way.
than just. Yeah.
Absolutely. That's amazing. That's an incredible tribute and description of Paul too. Yeah.
Right? I mean,
Yeah.
you know him, so
I know him, and he's just always been like super quiet and super serious. Hard to get to know kind of guy. Yeah. I mean, you're lucky to know him as well as you do.
yeah, I don't think he kind of like throws himself out there the way I do. But he was my roommate, so
Yeah, no.
and I
he's-
loved him the minute I met him. I was just like, I got very lucky in that I don't know why in that way, but sort of like with you, like when I sing the songs, I remember.
yeah.
If I'm like sing the farmhouse, I remember standing
Totally
in the
remember,
doorway of the
yeah.
farmhouse and like the northern lights going and me and you and like just tears,
Yeah.
That's how I feel when I play the guitars. It's it means so much to me that he
Yeah.
built them. And like check out this, if you feel this neck,
It's just-
he carved that. Look at
It's unbelievable.
it didn't come out of a factory. It didn't
No.
come out of a machine. He sat
Right.
there by hand and like polished this
Yeah.
thing and carved it until it was exactly the shape.
Right.
So it's like it feels like a living thing. So let me just, after that 91 guitar, because this is sort of the most important part of the story,
Okay.
he built Koa #1.
Yes.
That was in 1996.
And that became your main axe.
That's what I was playing last night. It's still,
Koa 1.
I don't know, and that thing, talk about unique sounding. We should go up and listen. I'll play it for you.
Yeah?
That guitar, there's people that don't. If you talk to guitar makers, Koa is a questionable wood to build guitars out of. There's definitely people who think the resonant qualities of it are just too wonky, and you'll see Koa guitars and they're beautiful, but there are a lot of people that don't rank them in the great sounding guitar category.
Sure.
You'll see like Koa ukuleles from Hawaii.
Yeah.
And then the guy will play, or the woman, or whoever's playing it will play like a real ukulele when they want it to sound good. But they'll put the Koa one on their wall or something. But I got Koa #1.
Yeah.
I just call it 96
Yeah.
in 1996. And so, Koa #1 was on at every show in 97, every show in 98, and it was on stage at Big Cypress. And it's like, was such a magical period of time that's like the magic guitar for me.
Yeah.
What can I
Cool.
say? Of all of them,
Yeah.
that's the one.
So why did
No
you play
question about
this
it.
one at GD50?
Because I played this one at GD50 because it has a middle single coil pickup.
Okay.
Okay, which Jerry used.
Yeah.
And at GD50
And I saw you put one in the spruce one.
to have a backup.
Yeah.
I put it in the spruce one to have a backup, and I put it in the spruce one because I don't play the spruce one. And I almost wanted to put one in one of the Koa ones, like 96.
Yeah.
But I don't want to touch that. That guitar is,
Yeah.
that's the one. 96, the Koa one.
Wow.
That's the guitar. And then in 2002, he built another one,
Yeah.
the second Koa. And I remember when he gave it to me, this is just Paul just built that 2002 one. He's like, I built you another one. I was
Without
like, I don't-
asking.
I didn't want it.
You didn't want
I
it.
remember thinking like he brought it, and I was like, "Why? I don't want another guitar." He kind of gave it to me, and 2002 is a little more resonant in the low end.
Uh-huh.
It's got even more feedback and resonance than 96. 96 is like, this is the. I've pulled out 96 with, Bob Ezra and our great producers, and they're kind of like, oh, try something different. Like, it doesn't, again, I don't know that anybody else would gravitate towards that guitar.
Yeah.
But for me, it's so unique sounding. It's even more unique sounding than the early ones.
Yeah.
It's got this bite. It's got this weird little bite that's
Last
like,
night in Funky Bitch, it sounded, really screaming. It was
Right?
awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah.
it's got this, you know
We
what I
were
mean? It's got
talking
this,
about that
Yeah,
this like
Dan and I were
bite.
talking. There was something. Maybe it's your amp too, like because you changed that
Yeah,
recently. But there was
I got a new
something
amp.
really super special about the bluesy, bitey sound of that.
Right.
Yeah, I could see it in your face.
Yeah.
Like you normally make
Oh,
guitar
man.
face, but you were like
Well,
really making
When
guitar
I-
face.
yeah. what I did with the amp was at GD50, I decided to start doing research, at Fare Thee Well or whatever it was. It's like, I've got to figure out how Jerry got that tone. The guy had the best tone. And now I'm going to go out there and spend a whole month sitting out there with all of his tech guys. I'm going to ask them. I'm going to figure this out once and for all.
Yeah.
So it led me on this sort of journey. So over the last couple of years, I've been changing amps and stuff.
I know there's
and pickups
it's
and all this.
noticeable. Yeah.
Well, now I met this guy in New York. His name's Gene. He works at Ultrasound, who really knew, he's an amp guru at the level that Paul is a guitar guru. And he explained all this stuff to me. In a nutshell, what he explained was that vacuum tube and resistor technology has changed, and that those amps that all those guitar players who we love were playing were late 60s amps.
Yeah.
And that up until about 1972, if you bought a tube amp, you got a certain quality of resistors, capacitors, and vacuum tubes, glue, speaker cones, cabinets, and grill cloth that in that era was cutting edge, in the way that a 1967 Camaro is more cutting edge than the 2006 Camaro, right?
Right.
At the time,
Yeah.
that was the best you could get. In the early 70s, when things started shifting towards circuit boards and stuff, a lot of those parts became tougher to get. Rock and roll had become huge. Stuff was getting mass produced.
Yeah.
And so that the amplifiers, the later year amplifiers, are lacking something that those early amps had.
Totally.
So there was a number of boutique amp makers that scooped up all the parts. That would be, the Dumble,
Yeah.
who makes those Dumble amps. Ken Fisher, who made Trainwreck amps. The Bruno at Bruno Amps.
Yeah.
And my amp is a Comet amp. Comet amp, the first Comet amps were made. Ken Fisher, the famous amp maker, oversaw the construction of Comet amps. So the thing about the Comet amp that I'm using now is that it's very simple, very high quality construction, sort of like my guitar.
Yeah.
There's nothing in there. There's like a volume knob, but the parts they're beautifully handcrafted. The chassis is stainless steel and welded.
Yeah.
The pots are top quality, dust-free pots. Everything's point-to-point wiring, and then there's like resistors and capacitors that were collected from the early
From like
days.
the Plexi days.
What I did now is that I've got 2 amps on stage because my crew won't let me on stage without a spare. So what I did was, one of them is loaded with 6L6s, like vintage 6L6s,
Yeah.
like a Fender,
Yeah.
and one of them is loaded with vintage EL34s, like a
EL34s.
Marshall.
Nice.
And I can foot switch between the two.
Oh, wow.
So basically I have
The
a
British
really
sound and
top
the
quality
American-
British sound and a top quality American sound with all the parts vintage, and then a cable. I got everything out of the way. And the idea is that now, and new cabinet, new speakers. So there's nothing in there at all. So when you hear that, Funky Bitch last night, the reason I was smiling is because it's just Paul's guitar, a George L cable, which is a great cable,
Yeah.
and this beautiful, pristine amp.
And how do you choose like good times, bad times? British?
Marshall,
Yeah.
Jimmy Page.
Yeah.
Funky Bitch Fender. It's not a Fender,
totally.
but it's
I
it's
get
like
what
you could
mean.
buy a vintage amp, and they're great, and they're expensive, unfortunately, but they're also 40 years old.
Yeah.
As good as they are, they're still really old. So like I had a vintage 1967 Fender, and I went and got it worked on, and the guy said that the transformer had been on so many trucks and stuff that like the metal on the transformer had started shifting where it wasn't, just from bumping around for 40
Wow.
years. These are like brand new vintage
Wow.
amps.
Wow. Well, Trey, I have to say,
we have to-
I had to, get a lot of people to agree to stealing time out of your day for this, and so I made some promises that I would be completely done by 4:00. It's 4:01, and I really don't want to go back on my promises.
Okay.
Nice people like Dickie and Patrick are out there waiting right there,
They're waiting.
right there,
I have
and I
so
don't want to
many
make them mad
questions.
because we have so many questions. Kind of like your set
call
list
you.
before the show.
Yeah.
You crumple them up. We might as well have done that with our questions because it's so enjoyable just talking to you. It's just fucking
Yeah,
awesome.
amazing.
So please, can you say that we could do this again?
Sure.
Awesome.
I'd love to.
That's all I want to know.
Great talking to you
Thank
guys.
you.
Yeah. Great
All
talking
right.
to you.
Thanks,
I come out and
Trey.
hit him. Dude, I've been sitting here all day.
Wow. So obviously, Dan and I had an incredible time interviewing Trey. We're already trying to sync our calendars for another interview about guitars, amps, and his signal chain. As you can tell, he's got a lot to say about it, and he's willing to share, which is great. So now I'm back from Florida, where I was just swimming in the Atlantic Ocean in February. And I'm staring out my window at a cold New Jersey, wishing for spring. I hope all of you are staying warm and safe, and I'll be back next week for more Under the Scales.